Hello, hello, my prepared friends. Let me know if you're hearing me. Before we get started, we are going to do the Patreon drawings really quick and introduce the new prizes. So if you are watching this later, then you can just jump forward 2 or 3 minutes and get that out of the way. So in case you don't recall, we're going to be drawing for 25 extra entries for the next drawing. Gonzo assisted opening or automatic knife, and the really cool Kudamon bushcraft, outdoor survival, whatever knife. So we're gonna do that one first. Start with the big ones and go down. All right, so this is the drawing. We're going to do our number wheel picker. Let's share our screen here. Hope you guys can see that. We're doing 1 through 132 because we got some bonus entries in there from last time. So let's do the first spin. Here we go. Spinning, spinning. It's making cool noises that you can't hear. What do we got? Number 8. Let's see who that is. That is Ed. Excellent. So you're going to be taken off for any of the additional drawings. Ed, you got the Kudamon knife. Let's go to do the, since Ed's extra entries are no longer in there, we're just going to go to 109 now. So now we're going to do the Gonzo automatic knife. Spinning. $97. That would be Dennis C. Dennis C gets that one. So he is now, and then the next one will be for the 25 extra entries. $29 would be Lincoln R. All right. So congratulations, guys. We got Ed M, Dennis C, and Lincoln R. And then for the next month, so for anyone who is signed up at any point, or you have to be signed up at the end, by the end of April to get drawn in May, we're going to do another extra 25 entries for somebody. We're going to do a super lightweight paperweight made out of lightweight but high density plastic. And then the main prize is the Ontario Knife Co. This is what's on the Rat 7 Adventure. I'm a huge fan of all the Rat models. I have a few. So I like the folding ones. I like the a lot of stuff that Ontario does. This package is a little beat up, but other than that, it has never been used brand new. So that's going to be the big prize for next month. So make sure you're active and signed up by the end of the month. And these prizes will get sent out. So congratulations to those winners. CLM says America is on sale. I'm a buyer. Been waiting for 20 to 30% drop forever. Well, we haven't got that yet. Um, I think I looked. I had, where's the robot? I had the Grok robot. Oh man, I lost the window. So how far are the US stock indices? Do I know how to spell indices? Um, down so far this year. We'll see. So, but it's big. So the S&P is down 16%, the Dow Jones down roughly 14%, and the QLD or the tracking for the Nasdaq, I don't know what, yeah, QLD they said is down 36%. So hugely down. If you recall, there was a young man, not so young these days, who, though he doesn't give financial advice, he did happen to mention few months ago that he was getting out of the US, pretty much all US stocks. I thought it might not be a bad idea if you did the same. And of course, yes, it was me. And I don't revel in this, the market's going down, but we knew it was going to happen eventually. We knew it was almost certainly going to happen, like 99% chance something like this is going to happen within the next 4 years, certainly 4 or 5. And I thought very likely that it would happen sometime this year, specifically the first half of this year, because Trump would be doing things and that would give an excuse for them to say that that's the cause. Anyone who wants this administration to do poorly, it's not that, like these things, the economy was hollowed out. It's so feeble, it's so sick. Everything is in a precarious position. The economy, the currency, all across the Western world. And so being able to point to stuff that Donald Trump is doing what is the easiest way for them to potentially get what they want, or at least twist the shiv. Yeah, Russell 2000's down, way down too. CLM says we'll be down 20% from S&P highs on Monday, down big over Sunday. I did think that. I was thinking that. Um, until I saw a tweet, or more specifically a article, and it was from US News. Says CNBC host Jim Cramer warns of Black Monday market crash over Trump tariffs. Well, now we know Jim Cramer is an almost perfect contrarian indicator. So now that he said that there's going to be a Black Monday, we might be time to buy the dip. It's going to be super green on Monday. He's so wrong. Maybe it'll be the one time that he's right. But I do expect that we'll see a lot of volatility tomorrow. It'll probably open down huge. Some people will swoop in, maybe even manufactured buying from the Fed or other elements to boost it back up. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not nearly that bad tomorrow. Um, but it could be really bad. Could be extra bad. We'll see. People had the whole weekend to think about it. Whether that's going to make it worse or better, we'll see. But overall, my thesis hasn't changed. I was expecting stuff like this to happen, not just down, but volatility, and specifically down, overall volatility, but certainly more in the downward direction. And if you're kind of like a day trader, there's a lot of money to be made in these situations because of these like whips up and down. That is not me. I do not have any of the necessary skill or attention span to try and figure out exact entry and exit and price points and all that. Definitely a time that you can make a lot of money if you're into that, but the trend is what I try to focus on. And I don't think it's, in my opinion, like I said, I'm not a trader. I'm not a financial um, advisor of any kind. My an irresponsible portion of my net worth is tied up in rocks, metals, but I don't think that it's time to buy just yet. And in fact, I think that I wouldn't be surprised. So everyone knows, like right now, even gold and silver by the masses and even the financial types is not really looked at as a hedge against market downturns. It's a currency hedge, a hedge against inflation specifically, and maybe overall major economic turmoil. But that's really not what most of these people are thinking of. They're thinking of, oh, Trump said thing, big number go down. That kind of thought process is all that really goes into it. He's ruining everything. It's the stocks are going to be down because earnings are potentially going to be down in the future, that sort of stuff. Let's go, HTP. So I have a confession to make for you. I actually forgot to buy on the other day, silver, on the silver squeeze day. And then it went down since like 4% or something. So like now I'm going to buy for sure if I can scrape any money together. But I wouldn't be surprised if we do see if Jim Cramer is somehow right in a shocking turn of events, and we do see really incredible, not specifically Monday, but next week or two are just catastrophic for the markets. I wouldn't be surprised to see gold and silver price go down, at least, on the ETFs and whatnot. Might not really have that much of effect on the, oh, break my desk, on the physical markets as we've seen before. But when people are like selling out right now, they're not doing it because they think this is the big one or because they think the currency is dead. They're just a flight to safety, to more like a flight to just non-variance, to stability. So they might just sell out of anything, park in cash, specifically if they have to do like margin calls and things like that, they might have to sell things like Bitcoin or gold and silver just to get some liquidity to cover their other. But yeah, I will try to buy some more tomorrow for sure if I can squeeze any money out. But like I was saying in the beginning, it does feel, I don't consider myself perfectly liberated because I don't have quite enough yet. Just body weight in silver is not enough, man. You got to have your body weight in gold. That's when you're liberated. So I still have a ways to go on that, but I do think we'll see. Um, I still am pretty much tracking I remember way back in the day, I think it was McIlvaney Finance did a big video on the Dow 3-2-1 gold ratio, and that's still not in absolute strict terms, but that's still more what I'm looking for as an exit point for gold and silver. Is when things get that crazy, I'm expecting it to be more like a 1-to-1 eventually get there. Yeah, we all need like 20 ounces of gold. I see 4,600 as a floor in the S&P. That would be roughly a 25% drop. Yeah, I mean, if you match up, I forget what the chart was. There's been some others on Twitter and whatnot that have been pointing to how well so far we've been matching up with like I believe it was 87 and different chart or crashes from back then. So if we follow those, there are some points, if we continue to follow those, that it would be probably a good idea to look at that and say this might be a good point to jump back in. Murphy says if a nuke goes off, I'll crap my pants. Yeah, man. Definitely the time to be wearing our brown pants. If you notice in my video when I was jumping off the cliff, I was wearing my black pants. No white pants for these kind of times. Crazy things could be happening. Get our red shirts and our brown pants. Soul Kitchen says this depression will be 3 to 4 times worse compared to the last one because of our higher population. I don't even think it's a higher population. I do agree with you that I think it certainly could potentially be worse. I don't think it's specifically because of our high population, though. Um, the population is only meaningful relative to things like employment and resources and stuff like that. I think specifically the thing that is much worse now is how much of a percentage of the population is dependent on the federal government and certain types of jobs that are would be going away or hurt more dramatically during a similar type of economic contraction. And because we don't have, if you have a big economic contraction, all the type of jobs that are going to go away, or at least start earning a lot less, are the service sector jobs, the discretionary spending. So anything retail, anything service based, a lot of these like delivery jobs, so the people are already quote unquote underemployed. All that's going to go way down because people are just going to stop spending money. And there's a lot fewer of the jobs in manufacturing and farming and things like that that the country actually needs to survive in a time when people don't have money. So anything that has a really inelastic demand, people are going to tighten their belts, and stop paying for. So all sorts of stuff that most of what American jobs are is stuff like that that would go down in a any sort of economic contraction or depression. And the government, so we already have invisible bread lines basically. And also, I saw something that I didn't have a chance to run the numbers for sure specifically, but it feels true to me, and I bet it is true because I've seen other similar stats that the average income during the Great Depression, even counting all the people who were like not working, the average income ratio compared to the average house price, it's worse now. It's harder to afford a house now than in like the midst of the Great Depression, considering their average income, their average house prices, our current average income, current average house prices, things like that are really bad. Um, so we are already in a very unstable, tenuous place in regards to economic stability. And if government ceases their spending, that's why I've always said we're in such a weird spot, have the wolf by the ears, so to speak, with the Fed and everything, because they can't really stop spending, or the entire current economy as we know it pretty much ceases to exist. But you kind of have to stop spending, or we implode into the eventual melt up, which is, what's going to happen. Um, High Desert Pioneer says inelastic demand. Check out the big brain on Brad. And I've got my tasty beverage. Yeah, so for those of you who didn't take economics honors in high school, uh, well, elastic demand is the ones that it stretches. So, if there's the price changes, the demand changes a lot. Inelastic means you could change the price a lot and the demand won't change a lot. So something like food. Food can get pretty expensive and people are still going to have to buy it. Same with a certain amount of gasoline and things like that, medicine stuff. But stuff like clothing, movie tickets, brand new cars, or certainly certain models of luxury cars and stuff like that. You could change the price even a little bit, and people are going to be, nah, man, I can't do that anymore. DoorDash, stuff like that. If you make any of this stuff even a little bit more expensive, trinkets and toys and video games, all this other stuff. So it's the staples that have a very inelastic demand. Um, the classic $20 gold was a 1 ounce. The classic $20 gold was 1 ounce. Maybe I need my glasses back. But yeah, I'm not targeting any specific price points. I will almost certainly be looking more at ratios of gold and silver. Anything less than 3 to 1 is when I'll be starting to think about selling gold and silver and buying potentially US stocks. But I think that'll just be more like the time to enter various investments, sell out of gold and silver, some of it, never all of it, but it won't necessarily be stocks. Like that might probably also be a good time to buy real estate or to buy other, and most of the stocks that I would buy at that point would probably be commodity based because I think they have a much better prospect of recovering than some of these like tech stocks and financials and all these other random companies that are super, super overvalued. I think gold and silver and a lot of the gold and silver stocks and commodity stocks and mining companies and all that will be dragged down I think everything will go down initially if we get a big like Black Monday super crash. Because like I said, people are just going to sell out. The cash is what people go to in a time like that. They may even have to liquidate some of the stuff that's doing well or not doing badly, like crypto and like gold and silver, just to cover margin calls and things like that. So I think initially everything will go down. I don't think physical price at the coin store might not go down, but even then, even the big companies like AppMex and stuff, and even some of the coin dealers, if they see the price go way down, it does affect the price a little bit, and so you probably will get a little cheaper. And I think it's a time to buy more of the good stuff, and then wait and see if we can get deals on the stocks, real estate, anything like that. I'm eventually going to need to farm somewhere to hide and raise sheep. So I don't know exactly where. It's not really great out here near Vegas for that. Not too much grass, a little too much heat. You can do it. So speaking of HCP, he makes it work up north, but you do definitely not quite as harsh and not quite as dry summers, I guess. But a little more vegetation. Joe Jackson says, "Man, I want another 6 months before the collapse. I have tourist season ahead." Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't. I mean, it could be very, very sudden, but I don't think it will be like overnight thing. I think it's just going to be continue to get worse. And as we've seen in the past, even like 2008, 1987, like these are not one day things. So it won't be, something like an EMP or a nuclear attack or something. Those could be like one day major events, major earthquake, something like that. But every other type of shit at the fan, realistic shit at the fan scenario plays out over a period of, especially economic ones, of months, if not years. Even if you look at looking back at things like Weimar Germany hyperinflation, like that stuff seems like a blip where it just like blew off top and then it's over. But the actual entire process took quite a while to play out, months, if not years, depending on what you view as the individual starting and end point. It's just that right at the very crazy end is what we really look at when, an ounce of gold went from like a million marks to like 150 trillion marks or something might have only taken a few months, but to go from 50 marks to or whatever it was at the beginning to a million might have taken a year, you know. And so always waiting for that exactly trying to time the end is probably not smart. But I do think that there definitely, unless we really see signs that we're entering the economic like dirt nap, and then it's just time to, go full Mad Max. You're going to want to take advantage of that time when the exchanges, like if people in Weimar Germany had just held on to their gold and silver throughout all of it, didn't sell any of it, they would have maintained their purchasing power. There's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, there were some amazing opportunities. I don't know if it's really apocryphal, if it's actually happened, but of course, a story of someone who paid off a mortgage by, for this giant estate by selling a sack of potatoes. Like that did happen in principle with like a few ounces of gold. Now we're worth enough to pay off entire mortgages for, huge houses, mansions, whatnot. And I'm definitely expecting that. Like I want to have a mortgage right now. If I got a big chunk of money, I would not pay off my mortgage 2.5%. I would buy more of this, and then when it very likely goes up tremendously, at least in relative to that mortgage, I might be able to pay off my mortgage with, 100 ounces of silver or something by the end of it. Who knows? If we really do see um, a true hyperinflation melt up. Now, if everything's going up though, like you're not necessarily going to be able to buy any, if silver goes up to $2,000 an ounce or something, everything else will be expensive too. So you'll just maintain your purchasing power. Um, that's why, but fixed percent interest debt is something that you could use to take advantage of. Now, I don't recommend people go out and get debt because we never know what's going to happen and the interest rates are not that good now. But most of us have something, whether that's a little bit of credit card debt, or certainly those of us who have mortgages is the big one. And that's one of the advantages that I'm hoping will at least come from all this, if we make it at all, is that I can just pay off my house, and family members even maybe can, or certainly can pay off theirs. All right. Joe Jackson says, "What's the difference between a canoe and a Canadian? Canadians don't tip." I see a decades-long downhill period. Very, very likely. Um, SU says, in today's money, if a clear 50K per year is okay, depending on how old you are, you need 1 to 5 million in gold in order to maintain your lifestyle. A clear 50K per year in investment. Krakatoa says, keep stacking, bud. That is the plan, my friend. I will try. Got to win. I got a big poker tournament playing tomorrow. If I win that, I'll buy some more for sure. Appreciate that, Bright Eye Security with the super chat. Says, do you think China is funding the protest here in the U.S. so they can invade Taiwan because of tariff pressure? Those barges are making me think. I don't know if they're directly funding it simply because I don't think they have to. I think they are just getting ready to take advantage of situations if they decide that's advantageous. Although I'm pretty sure they do certain things like flooding fentanyl into the country purposely to cause instability. Now, I don't think that's exclusively to cause instability. I think they view that as a beneficial side effect of something that they're probably primarily doing just to make money. But we know they've done certain things with the long-term view of this will destabilize the country. So I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't seen direct evidence of China funding these. And these protests have been pretty tepid. They're all boomers, crusty old like flabby fucks. It's really funny actually. So the USAID thing, really, that was who was funding all this stuff, was elements within our own government. When disrupting that was one of the best things they possibly could have done, and it's insane how much that has disrupted the status quo of their whole like um, grassroots or astroturfed. Um, and I think that's what we're seeing with why these um, protests are so kind of weak and tepid and disjointed and just is because of funding. And so I don't think China is directly funding them. I think it was elements within our own government and NGOs and things like that that were funding them and now have been at least, if not crippled, significantly handicapped, which that's good. That's very good because the less amount of unrest we have, the better, because that's really the big risk for most of us. If we have decent preps, like I said, I'm as possible as it is to have things like EMP, widespread nuclear war. Those aren't the major, highly likely things. It's what we will experience during the economic collapse, civil unrest, stuff like that. So, and that's all harder to prepare for. Then you can't just put up, a few extra buckets of rice and expect to be able to fend off crazy people for 2 years of civil unrest or something like that. But so I've been happy with actually how little protest or how few protests and how not significant the civil unrest has been so far. I think the bigger risk is for stuff related to, or at least we're told it's related to Iran. False flag, maybe. People who've snuck in over the border, even. I don't think, maybe they're just stupid and everything and could do this, but I really don't see Iran having any benefit from doing any sort of terror attacks in the US right now because that would just give the government or the elements within the government who are the warmongers and who do want to do whatever Israel says would give them plenty of fodder for saying or justification for saying, see, we need to do something about Iran. They're terrorists attacking us. It won't stop. We have to fight them over there, so we can't fight them over here, and all the other nonsense that we've heard a million times before. So I don't think that if I see that kind of stuff, I would think have to look very hard before I would be convinced that it was legitimate, because that wouldn't serve their interest at all. And that they want to what they want to tell you that like, oh well, that's just what they do. They can't control themselves, whatever. And I'm like, okay. 20K at a time, VA home loans, creating boarding houses, three of them clear me 60K per year, but I have to spend 10K to have my manager supervise, so I don't have to do it. Well, that's nice. I would try to, if they're anywhere near you, do it yourself and buy 10K worth of gold for a few more years. But I understand that can be a lot of hassle. But congrats on having that cash flowing assets. People can buy grain, grind it themselves, and make porridge. Food costs $5 per day, not $50 per day. Yeah, I mean, I've talked before about how I'm never going to be grinding my own grain. I'll buy the pre-ground stuff. Rice specifically is doesn't need to be very calorically dense, very cheap. And yeah, you can even now you can buy. I did that video a year or two ago. It might be a little bit more now, but you can still get a year's worth of real calories that aren't complete garbage for 120 to 150 bucks a month. And that's mostly going to be, and especially if you're not talking about long-term food. I was talking about like spam and stag chili and rice and things like that. But and eggs used to be one of those things. Now they're not anymore. But if you really, if you're not talking, if you're just talking about eating, like I need to live off 120 bucks a month in food or something, and still be healthy, chicken and rice and or beans, and that's all you need. And then you can mix in a few things and you can use like the rewards that you get. A lot of like Albertsons and Vons and other things have rewards set up so that after you get to a certain amount of spending, you can get like $5 off meat, buy yourself a steak or something like that. Where do those people come from? Where did they park? I'm not sure who you're talking about. At the protests? Nothing but old crusty people who protest here in New Hampshire. Yeah, exactly. Jack Walt says the boomer takes careful aim at Eric and unloads my iced seltzer water bottle and says you're all wet, Eric. I don't understand at all. Do boomers even drink seltzers? Cutting back on steak and eating more rice and beans, less fat, more carbs, more save money. Yeah, look, like I said, go chicken legs. You can, if you get the bone-in ones, you can a lot of time get them for like, especially if you have like a Mexican or Asian market near you. Sometimes you can get them for like $1.19, $1.50 a pound, or maybe even less. I know at Walmart specifically, if you go in and get the cold rotisserie chickens, like after they've been sitting there all day warm and no one bought them, they'll put them in the chilled section and mark them down to like 350 or something here. So, and I've took them all apart and weighed them, and you get more. You get like almost 3 pounds of meat off one of those rotisserie chickens. Like sometimes it depends on the size, but between 2 and 3 pounds of meat for 350 already cooked. So you don't have to use any electricity, just warming it back up. Don't have to use any seasonings or something like that. So yeah, you're probably getting some Bill Gates mutant GMO chicken, unfortunately, grown in a pod like the Matrix or something, which is unfortunate. I would much rather, if I had enough money, only get exclusively like not necessarily organic, but more like the humanely raised. Organic doesn't mean much these days, but the point being, if we're in like a depression or you're really struggling for money, get your 20-pound bag of rice, get your rotisserie chickens or just the chicken drumsticks and stuff, and some beans, and you can actually eat pretty healthy, pretty cheaply. I don't think there's any reason to go try to go beyond some people like Prepper Princess and others really have it in their head that they want to push down their spending on food like really low, like 50 bucks a month or something like that. And she does it sometimes by like foraging and stuff, which you can do that's awesome. I think that once you get down below like 150, I think the health reasons alone are behoove you to do other things, use that time to do other things that would actually just get you a few bucks and then spend that money on food. And I don't think most people will see a big benefit. The amount of time and effort and everything else you'd have to put in to take your food budget from like 150 to under 100, you will get more than 50 bucks spending that amount of time doing any sort of other things, flipping a small storage unit here and there, going to a garage sale or Goodwill and finding things to sell on eBay, getting on TaskRabbit and building people's IKEA furniture for an hour or two a week, things like that would be much better use of your time. And then you could still spend 150. If you can spend 150, 200 bucks a month on food, you can eat all the calories you would need in a actually healthy food. If you really are just like, I need to survive for a month, you can certainly spend, 50 bucks a month and get enough calories. But most of those like really, really cheap calories are going to be not that great for you. Lots of preservatives, stuff like that. But it can be done, especially if you have, and if you're at that level, then yeah, sure, get some trees or bushes or anything because a small amount of food will make a big difference for you. And there is a lot of one things I've done with the if you get on these storage unit websites to do the lean auctions or even garage sales or even just collect anything you can get free, just get a batch of free stuff. Anything, doesn't matter what it is, just anything. Like you'd be surprised at how often you can come across free stuff, especially if people in your life know that you will take things free. And you can ask, you can go on the YouTube or Facebook free section. Craigslist has free section still for people who use it, and the buy trade groups, and then just get all the free stuff and then make a big batch of it and say, I will trade for and list your stuff. And I make it generic. If you're too specific, nobody will have it or bother. But if you say, we'll trade this for non-perishable food or any food or toiletries or cleaning supplies. That's stuff that everyone has to some extent. And you'd be surprised at how little I have paid for like any of that stuff over the past. It actually like rankles me when I have to buy like I haven't bought toilet paper or paper towels in like 3 years because like random piles of crap that I will get from like a storage unit or something, and I'll just be like, hey, whoever wants this, give me any amount of a couple rolls of toilet paper, a couple rolls of paper towels. They just swing by and drop it off, and that shit's expensive now, like real paper towels. And if you can do that, you're literally spending a few hundred fewer dollars a year, which you could roll into your food budget or into your gold and silver. And if you're overweight, then literally I know it sounds horrible to us modern Americans, and I've done it before just to see what it feels like. You should literally just have 1, 2, or even 3 days a week that you are just not eating, that you're just fasting. Um, and however much you're spending on, if you can do 2 days, 2 days out of a week that you're fasting, you know, that's a significant decrease in your um, food budget, and it'll increase your health. It'll increase your mental fortitude and preparedness level, and you'll spend a lot less on food. It sounds horrible, like an entire day, but like it's really nothing. It really is pretty modern thing for Americans to eat every single, or not Americans, but for human beings to eat every single day. It's only within the past a couple hundred years maybe, and certainly like multiple times a day, every day, and to act like we're being, tortured or punished if we don't get multiple meals a day every day, that's a very modern phenomenon. And honestly, um, say what you will about the, carnivore diet and things like that, but I will say that it is much easier to fast when you're not used to eating a ton of carbs because your body gets used to the cheap energy for carbs. And regardless of whether or not it's better for health, better performance, or whatever, it's certainly easier to fast if you're already used to not having a lot of carbs because your body, once it starts having to go to burning fat, it's like, give me more of those carbs. That's so much easier for energy. And that's when you will get those like hunger pangs and real cravings is getting over that hump. And if you're already like eating, carnivore, really low carb, you won't have nearly as much of a initial kind of reaction to a short-term fast as you will if you have a carb-dependent diet. Now, it is a lot more expensive to eat carnivore or really low carb because stuff like rice and carbs are the cheapest thing. So if you really are trying to focus on getting that food bill down, then you're not gonna be able to do like carnivore. But it's not on the flip side, it's not as expensive as people might think. Um, you're not going to be doing it for less than 100 bucks a month. But if you stick to mostly chicken, some of those cheaper kinds of fish, occasional steak when you get a good deal, and things like that, um, then it's not outrageously expensive. But if you're not doing carnivore, potatoes are really cheap too. Like when people think of potatoes as being like a junk food, it's because of stuff like fries that are doused in oil and preservatives, and mostly it's the oil that gives you that huge amount of calories. Like an actual just potato, like if you just take a potato a pound of potatoes, like an entire pound, is like 600 to 800 calories or something like that. That's a lot of food. Most people are not going to be that hungry after eating an entire pound of food. And what's the price of regular potatoes? You can still get them for $1 or $2 a pound a lot of times on sale. So you can have pounds of food. And same with rice. Let's go back to the I've been ranting about food. I remember back in college, I had when I was trying to save money, I could do it for like $80 a month. But I mean, that was like 2003. So, a lot changed in 20 years. But I think I could do for $80 a month now what you can do for, 150, 160, so twice as much. Let's see what we got. Japan stocks limit down, circuit breakers halt market. Yeah, that is actually a good point. Japan could be where a lot of this really breaks, not the stock market. And they'll still try to blame it on Trump, but there's been people like I think his name is Michael Gayed and a few other financial commentators who were like, look, this has not played out yet. Like the yen carry trade has not unwound. We've seen people react to it, but there was a lot of, straying away from true equilibrium in the currency and financial markets because of the yen carry trade that has been going on for decades, and it is not unwound at all yet. And this is they're having to do a lot of conjuring of dark energy to try and keep that from straying too far from what they want. For those of you who don't know what that was, in their years and years of stagflation and trying to manage their economy, the Japanese central bank has kept their interest rates very, very low artificially. And what people would do, institutions and people would just borrow money at these very, very low interest rates that were so low that you could just take the money that you borrowed and buy other countries' treasuries, specifically the United States, but not always, at rates that were paying more than you were paying to borrow that money. So you would just make money, free money on this float. But it did mean that there was a huge amount of money that's just outstanding from these loans where they would borrow from uh, Japan and then buy or loan to the United States in the form of buying treasuries. And that causes a lot of perturbations where things are moved, a lot of money, and all that has to unwind. All that money has to go back or and unwind all those huge loans and that fake kind of situation that we have. And that's just one element of the economy that's so fake. Everything is so fake. Everything is so fake. That's why I think like it's just so hard to figure out exactly how it's going to break when the entire system is just fake, that all you can really do is like, let's stop trying to figure out what fake part is going to break first and just grab onto what's real. And how do I know this is real? Because it's literally in my fucking hand right now. It came out of the ground. And that's about all we can really count on as being guaranteed to survive all this. And with stuff that people like Chris Martenson and others have talked about, like the whole great taking thing and the way that they've set up for bail-ins and all this other nonsense, even paper ownership of real assets isn't safe because of how fake this all is and how everything's loaned out, and the stuff that you buy you don't even own anymore necessarily. The stocks that you own in a brokerage account, you might be the third or fourth claimant on them, and all sorts of other shenanigans. So even something like, if a mining company might be a great thing to own, but you just have to make sure you really own it. And these days, if it's not in your hand, that's quite a big ask to say that you own it. Let me get some more comments. Excuse me. Goats make sense more than sheep. They defend themselves better, eat rougher forage, offer milk. Yeah, it depends. Goats definitely eat. Uh, they can eat a lot like crappier foliage and whatnot. It's just going to depend on what you're using them for. You won't get as much meat, I don't think, certainly, as some big beefy sheep. But yeah, they're in the same category right there. And yeah, they're not quite as feeble as sheep, at least in terms of like predators. I don't know how well they stand up to parasites and things like that. And I think it's going to be climate dependent too. There's going to be a lot of climates where goats do better and some where sheep do better, things like that. But I do think you would just get more meat from sheep on average than goats. But goats are the same thing. Same, and that's what I will do one day when I get my farm. Cows are just too big, and I might have some pigs too, maybe. Gotta have some bacon. Pigs are good because they can just eat everything. all sorts of garbage. For me, the big ones, chickens are fantastic, especially if you have a system for composting and vermicomposting with like soldier flies. Really would love to redo another. Do you guys? How many of you guys were watching back when I had aquaponics? Those will be the real long time viewers. Definitely will be doing an aquaponics setup again. I might even do more of just like a straight up hydroponics setup. Um, to raise fish specifically because aquaponics you will raise fish but you're primarily raising the plants so if you're somewhere where you can grow plants anyway like good soil or whatever good amount of precipitation then you don't necessarily need to go through the whole rigmarole of the aquaponics because you're primarily doing that to raise plants with the side effect of a little bit of fish that come out whereas if you have like an actual aquaculture excuse me um, you're raising the fish. And you do have to have a few more inputs, chemicals and filtration and stuff like that. But you can raise a lot of more fish and you can feed them, depending on the type of fish, but you can feed them the black soldier fly larva. So you can take all sorts of waste, compost, even sometimes manure. You can grow the black soldier flies and use them to raise fish and raise chickens. And then obviously the goats or sheep, you have to have land and vegetation for them to eat. But the goats, I mean, I've actually seen this is hilarious. There are companies, they are so voracious in terms of like what they will eat. They eat anything, stuff even that is like poisonous to us sometimes. They just fucking eat everything, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Um, it means you have to be more careful with like managing your land if you have goats. But it also like there are companies that rent out their herd of goats so to clear people's land. So instead of getting like a bush hog or lawnmowers, you just like as long as your area is fenced in, they just drop their goats off and you pay them for like a day or a month rate. And they you should go see these pictures. It's hilarious. It looks like you hit the thing with just like this is gone. They just eat absolutely everything, and it's hilarious. I have some family that has some property back in Florida that I'm like, we were gonna do if we will do this one day because it's Central Florida is all completely overgrown, kudzu and the Brazilian pepper plants. I hate that stuff. And they would just eat everything. So the problem is they will eat everything. If they can reach it, they're going to eat it. So they will decimate whatever you have there. Um, but sometimes it's what you want. And like you can just rent a herd of goats to just shred clear the land. It's pretty awesome and awful at the same time. Lost Trail says this is all one big negotiation scare tactic for the plebes. 2 weeks from now, all the numbers will be back to normal. People will move on to the next thing to clutch their pearls about. It's possible. I mean, definitely the way it's presented is propaganda, but we know there are actual very big problems with the economy, with the currency, and those are not just going to correct overnight. So is it the tariffs? No. This is the excuse. Um, but there are problems, and eventually one of those two outcomes has to happen. Either we default on a debt or we inflate away into oblivion. And I think it's basically all but 100% guaranteed. I think it's more likely that aliens come down and save us than it is that we just outright default on debt and have that massive economic contraction and don't, you know, inflate away or at least try to switch to some sort of new currency to save the system. Because I mean, if you guys just I don't think most people even have a inkling of how much the economy would have to contract to get, and it really can't anyway because of the way our currency works. You can't just balance the budget and stop spending more than we owe because the every time a loan is made, or actually it's backwards, every time a dollar is made, a loan is taken or created. So there's always more debt than there is dollars. So eventually that system has to implode or change. It's just inevitable. You literally can't pay off the debt. There are not enough dollars. The system does not create enough dollars because anytime you create dollars, you're creating more dollars in debt. Creating $1 creates $1.05 in debt, or $1.07 in debt, or whatever the you know U.S. Treasury current rate is. Unpopular opinion, nothing will get better until we have a full reset. Well, I mean, that's kind of just what I was talking about. And not to say nothing will get better, but these problems will not be fixed. You may see certain things like in certain sectors or certain stocks or whatever, but the problems will not go away until we get a full reset of some kind. And I have a feeling that's not going to be good for us. But if you have real things, you're in the best position to come out ahead. Jack says I was saying I was spraying you with ice cold water and saying you're all wet. Yeah. Okay. Taiwan stock limit down, circuit breakers halt market. Okay, so looking like for once Jim Cramer may actually be right. We'll see, but they may inject all sorts of, crazy Fed purchases, so we'll see. But like I said, I am not surprised that they would allow it to crash on Trump's watch. They have the perfect boogeyman now with the tariff thing that they can be like, all right, let it rip, don't do anything to save it. Um, because now we have a perfect thing. And all the normies think that that would make sense. That, oh, it was just tariffs that every country has done and was already doing and is tweaking the amounts, and all of a sudden the whole thing collapsed. Yeah, right. Um, Potatoes have last long, kept well, and can use as seed for sure. B. Williams says Costco rotisserie chickens are the best value going. They are. They are bigger chickens than any other pre-cooked chickens from any other grocery stores. Yeah, they are crazy. I think they're still $5 or $6. Insane deal there. Um, yeah, and you probably definitely get like a full 3 pounds of meat off those for $5 or $6. So already cooked. So if you're living near a Costco, that's a good way to do it. And even with as sad state of affairs as probably mutated GMO chickens are, it's still far healthier to eat that meat than it is to eat all sorts of, highly processed foods, for sure. There are free yard sales. I got free tools and gardening tools. It was great. That's awesome. Oats with sugar. That's cheap. It's all carbs. Depends on how your body handles that. Honey is probably a better way than just dumping sugar on it, and it tastes delicious. Bright Eye says, I'm buying the remaining parts of my NVG kit before the tariffs hit. I just need the laser and a large supply of batteries. Nice work, man. I would love to have some of those, but I am a poor. Hope I lost it. Um, Economically speaking, the carnivore diet is the cheapest way to eat when you factor in every calorie you buy. I mean, it's definitely not cheapest. You do have because it's no way it's just not cheaper than buying stuff like rice and beans. It's the cheapest, truly healthy thing, and it's not as expensive as people will think, but it just isn't cheaper than buying, oats and rice and beans. It's just not, but it can be done fairly cheaply. It won't be an event. Society will maintain normalcy and they will slowly shift normalcy to their version. That's probably more along the line. It's rarely just an event. There's always something that they point to, like, oh, the tariffs, or oh, the election, or oh, Archduke Ferdinand, or whatever. But, yeah, it's usually a process involving multiple events. Rice has half the calories of beans, corn, wheat, millet, and it takes a long time to cook. If you have enemies and have to cook with wood, that's an issue. Yeah, that's why I like the sun oven, solar cookers, and any of those like rice or beans, you could theoretically just soak them for hours and eat them and not have to. But I think it's good to have a good propane setup because you can do that indoors. I mean, you should still probably have some kind of ventilation, but obviously our ovens are um, our gas ranges are propane done indoors. So if you have an propane tanks and like a camp stove, you can do that indoors. Just got to be careful so you don't have to go outside, make a big fire, and have your enemies all see that. So propane is really good. Sun oven even better, but you do have to be outdoors and have a lot of sun. Glenn says, as a Canadian, I'm hoping for five QST, five Quist State, Real Rights, USD, and American Amazon would be awesome. Exploring with Larry, that's a score. Nice find. You're talking about the free tools, yeah, for sure. USA may need Canada resources if war breaks out. Yeah, probably, likely would. We do have a lot of our internal resources, but if something happens with China, then we'll rely a lot more heavily on our North American trading partners for sure. Seamus says, Black Pill, who is ready to cash out of the stock market? I'm 5K down and have a long-term plan. I told you, I cashed out months ago. I think it was before the beginning of the year, but if not, it was in January. It's numbers on a computer screen right now. If you don't have it in a physical sense, you don't own it. Exactly. That's what I've been talking about. Murphy says, I went to go sell my silver and they wouldn't buy it. They're probably only selling it. I don't know about that. Depending, who'd you go to? I think places like AppMex and stuff online will usually buy it for you. No reason to sell now. I agree. Goat milk tastes rough if they are allowed to eat what they want. I believe that if they're eating all sorts of garbage, it probably would taste weird. Poison ivy and Brazilian holly and shit like that. Um, but if you're not having them for milk, just meat, probably not quite as big of a deal. See how much it jeeps gling up silver. That's cray cray. I need a how much it keeps going up silver. That's crazy. I need a farm too. Yes. Silver just went vertical after being a screaming great deal. Did it? Did I miss out the 4%? After the, let's see what Apex has got going on. Um, yeah, 3%. I don't consider that vertical, but it's, 3% is 3%. It's a big jump for one day. Gold holding steady at like 30, just under 3,100. Silver just under 31. Lost wages has shifter soil. They will string us along for sure. I have been here since before your Jack Spirko ran. All right. I like Jack Spirko. He was just being dumbass, and I called him out on it. And I don't know if you remember at the time, but I had like made a video, and that rant like popped up very early in the Google results. Like if you said Jack Spirko, like one of the first things that showed up would be like my video. And he was like, "Bro, can you please take that down?" And I was like, "All right, you ask nicely." So hopefully one day when I need something from him, he will return the favor. But I've always agreed with almost all of his prepping philosophies, and he's one of the originals, man. The concept of the commonality of preparedness was first at least explained or enunciated by him. I talk about him all the time. I definitely still recommend his material. Spirko is a dollar store Jim Jones. Peanut butter in bulk is dirt cheap protein, high calorie, no cooking. Sure, definitely. Anything that oily, you have to worry about long term storage. It's pretty shelf stable, pretty good. You get a long time out of it, but it's not going to last for like 10 years. But definitely peanut butter if you like it, not allergic to it. It's cheap dollar per, and you get a lot high fat, but a lot of good protein too. Is goat cheese pizza a thing? Might need to invest in goats for the apocalypse. I mean, if you have goat cheese, you could make goat cheese pizza. So why not? If the debt is default, to consider who is the collateral. I mean, they're not just going to default in the traditional sense. They'll do some shenanigans, some hand waving about how they're paying it off and all this other nonsense, or switching to the new system, and now you get these credits, or you own a certain amount of oil that will produce in the future, or whatever. Trump is playing 4D chess with these tariffs. I don't buy into the whole like everything he's doing is like some widely calculated 4D, but it's not the move of retardation that all his opponents seem to think. Like I said, tariffs have been used by every government in the world, modern government in the world, since they've been created. All these countries existing already had tariffs both ways. Like we had some, they had some. So he's really just adjusting tariffs. He's not instituting anything new. So it's ridiculous that people are acting like this is some new thing that he just made up. Um, so it's just uninformed. CLM says Buffett has billions on the sidelines for this exact moment. Correct. He will be very active the next few weeks. Take that from that what you will. Yeah, and that's what I mentioned in these months ago when I said I'm getting out. Is that certain entities like Warren Buffett had hundreds of billions on the sideline. People like Jamie Dimon, J.P. Morgan, and others like Zuckerberg were selling off stuff that they, in amounts and things that they had never done before, going to cash. So I'm like, hey guys, probably gonna see some stock market tumult this year. And what do you know? SU says 40 years ago, some outfire wrote a book about feeding fish parts to catfish and feeding garden leftovers to the rabbits. You can do that. If shit hit the fan, everyone will have lots of enemies. Potentially. Depends. SWAT team arrested 4 cartel 2 nights ago out front near your place. Crazy. Been here since your long hair Florida days, hiding silver in plain sight. All right. Yeah, that was a few years ago now. I've been in Vegas. It doesn't seem like, but I moved out here to Vegas 7 years ago, 8 years ago almost. So yeah, if you were when I was in Florida, that's been a minute. Been a minute for sure. Future trading market suspended, circuit breaker tripped. Interesting. Yeah, gonna get interesting. Let's see what we got. It definitely could. Yeah, stock futures plunge, Dow futures tumble as the market sell-off continues. Dow futures, but we have seen that before where futures are really bleak, and then all of a sudden at the open, people try to jump on that dip. So who knows? We won't really know until early tomorrow morning. Well, early for me. The market opens like 6 a.m. out here. I will not be here to see. I'll be awake to see that. Lucius says my key investment has been all in on agriculture. I think that's very, very wise. If I had my druthers, I mean, that's one thing that you're absolutely. I was just telling a friend the other day, like, no matter what, how dystopian we get with AI and all this other stuff, robots will never be turning um, plant vegetation, cellulose into meat, or creating food in that direct way like that. We always will need land. Um, I don't believe the people who think that we're just going to be able to make meat in a factory more efficiently than a ruminant like a cow or a sheep standing in a field eating grass. But you just need the field and you need the grass and you need the plants and that sort of thing. So I think that is the single best thing we could do in a direct resource way. Obviously, I think gold and silver is probably the most versatile, but yeah, like productive agricultural land is obviously like top tier asset. But appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to sign up for the Patreon. I gotta go eat some food. Speaking, all this talk about food and goat milk and agriculture is making me hungry. So next, everyone who's in the where did I put it? Signs up for Patreon or is signed up by the end of this month, April. The next prizes will be, of course, we'll have someone get 25 extra entries. We'll have someone get this super lightweight, high density plastic knuckle duster and a brand new Ontario Rat 7 Adventurer bushcraft survival knife. Excellent. So I appreciate you guys watching, and maybe I'll make a video tomorrow if we see anything too crazy. But stay frosty, and I'll talk to you guys soon.